Hello everybody, it's the latest tactical analysis video from Stats Perform. I'm Duncan Alexander, and today we're going to look at Monday night's game, Liverpool against Arsenal. The champions against maybe the new pretenders to the crown after Arsenal have made an excellent start. Do you remember the last time that Liverpool, Arsenal and Everton all won their opening two games of a top flight season? Well, no you don't, because this is the first time it's ever happened. Liverpool are playing Arsenal then on Monday night. It should be a cracking match. Liverpool eased Thiago into their team in the second half against Chelsea last weekend in a pretty comfortable win, but Arsenal know they have it all to do when they go to Anfield. They've only ever lost 9 Premier League games by a margin of 4 or more goals, but 5 of those have come at Anfield, 3 of them in the last 6 years. So it's a big task, but they've shown signs under Mikel Arteta that things are improving and that they've actually got a plan, and they might be able to shock Liverpool just as they did in the Community Shield last month. Here to look at the game with me are Kevin Kraus, Tom Reynolds and Ben Mackrell. So without any further ado, Kevin, over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. We're going to start with Arsenal, and we're going to start with looking into their playing styles. So to measure playing styles, we've got these radars in which we're seeing various styles measured against league average. So this dotted line represents the league average of 0%. Right now we're looking at Arsenal last year. So they were, essentially a mid-table team, and that's what it looks like here. So with maintenance possession, they were a bit above the league average, 20% above league average, and that just wasn't really translating into tons of more substantial possession with build-up and sustained threat. We say they're below the league average with counters, fast tempo, right around league average with crossing, below league average with high press regains, and below league average with direct play as well. Now, if we switch over to the first 2 games of this season, we see some of the same, but some departures as well. So that maintenance play is actually increased. So they're playing with the ball in the back a lot. Maintenance play as possession in their own half. A little bit more build up, but sustained threat, again, minus 4% from the league average. So pretty similar to what you'd expect out of a mid-table team. And where we're seeing a bit of change is fast tempo. So they're playing above league average in fast tempo now with 8.5 possessions on the team level and 20% above the league average. A little bit more high press as well. So they were not a great pressing team last year, and they still have to prove that this year. But they're at least showing that they can do that maybe a bit above league average. What they're not doing is countering. 1.5 counter possessions per match, resulting in nothing so far. So minus 64% of the league average. Again, it's early, not a massive sample size. But with Willian coming into the team, they might actually be able to increase that a bit, and it might be an area for them to target against Liverpool and prove that they can actually attack from the back and get the ball forward quickly in a counter.
Okay, so from that playing styles analysis that Kevin's just given us, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into what Arsenal have been doing, not just in the last couple of games, but actually, really since the restart. I think this new Arteta team, this new style of play has really started to come to the fore since that restart. And we're in a bit of a strange situation right now where, we actually have 2 previous encounters within the last, couple of months. Liverpool and Arsenal met at the Emirates on the 15th of July. And then played in the Community Shield only a few weeks ago. So we've got quite a good idea how these 2 teams are going to line up against each other. And the big kind of piece that has been important in this new Arteta team has been this change of shape. They've really started to focus on this 3 at the back, and from our shape analysis using tracking data, we can identify here that clearly 3 at the back. These 2 wing backs are pushed on, almost creating a kind of 4 in midfield. 2 sitting midfielders. You've got Xhaka, Ceballos, who have played in those roles. Torreira came back after the restart and played in there as well. One's normally slightly deeper than the other to protect that back 3. And then you've got this dynamic front 3 led by Aubameyang, Lacazette. We've now got Willian in there, and Nketiah's come in and after his goal scoring form last season, looks a real threat for Arsenal this year as well. So we're going to dive into that shape. And although a lot of the focus has been around Aubameyang, particularly the contract situation that's now resolved, although the focus has been on those, I think the big key for Arsenal and for Arteta particularly has been the impact of these 2 wing backs. So if we go down and look at our a role analysis that identifies the influence that every player has through every touch of the ball using possession value. We can see that, from the last 10 games that Arsenal have played across the 2 seasons, Saka and Bellerin are in the top 5 in terms of their influence and their impact on the way that this Arsenal team is playing. And we're going to be able to dive into that a little bit deeper now. So using our pattern analysis that breaks down every possession that the team has and groups them into the kind of pattern that is most commonly used by this Arsenal team in this example, we can quite clearly see that they're trying to move the ball wide. A lot of these patterns involve long passes, moving the ball from the back 4, back 3 into those wide channels and trying to get Bellerin, Saka, Kolasinac has played in there as well. They're getting high up the pitch, getting into those dangerous crossing positions. And as we're going to see in a minute, actually those front 3 are actually quite narrow. And so they're creating the space for those wide players to get into these dangerous situations. And if we look at the kind of sustained threat phase where they're really dominating possession in the final third and creating these chances, and we look at only patterns that involve both Bellerin and Saka, we can see that actually they're having a huge impact on this Arsenal team in the final third. They're often involved much higher up the pitch into these areas, linking in with the likes of Willian, Lacazette and Aubameyang and Pepe in those areas to break the final third and break into the box. So they're really crucial to how Arsenal play. So now we can dive into our shape analysis and identify in the game against West Ham last week the actual shape using tracking data and the position of these wing backs and how high up the field they get. Now, using this data, we can identify the players that play in each of these roles during the game. And we can see how high Saka is getting in that kind of really high left wing back position, and Bellerin on the other side, well beyond the halfway line, beyond the 2 sitting central midfielders of Ceballos and Xhaka, and really getting quite close to this more narrow front 3. You'll see that they're all inside the 18-yard box, inside the line of the 18-yard box, to create that space for this overlap. We see how high up the pitch they are, 38 metres from goal, and really good width from the team, mainly through these wing backs. Now, on the flip side, if we look at how they look defensively, obviously they drop in, they get a little bit deeper. But against West Ham, they were still quite high up, almost still maintaining that 3-4-3 formation. With Saka on the left, Bellerin on the right, in line with the 2 central midfielders, and kind of quite narrow, but still relatively high up the pitch. 32 metres from goal when they're defending on average is a pretty high line for this Arsenal team. But if we go back to July and look at that last Premier League fixture between Arsenal and Liverpool at the Emirates, it's a very different story, and this is what they're going to have to face up against on Monday night. If we first look at the attacking shape, you can see how much deeper they are. They're almost 10 metres further back in attack with the ball than they were against West Ham. So they're having to start from a much deeper place with possession. The wing backs are a lot deeper. If you remember against West Ham, they were well over the halfway line in attack. But in defence, when they're playing against Liverpool, they actually had to start a lot deeper and try and attack. Now, some of that will obviously be the pressure that Liverpool are putting them under, but also it'll be kind of being aware that if they lose possession, they're going to have a lot of threat on the counter-attack. But when we look at them defensively against Liverpool, this is where it really shows. They're 6 metres further back defensively than they were, not holding that high line. And the 2 wing-backs are much deeper. They're almost back into a more traditional full-back position, in line with those 3 centre-backs, deeper than the 2 central midfielders. And if we overlay the Liverpool team in this game in the last end of season, you can see why. Not only have they got to worry about the likes of Mane and Firmino and Salah in these positions, but look how high Trent Alexander-Arnold gets as that attacking fullback. So he's going to be pushing Saka back. He's going to be pushing Bellerin back on the other side with Robertson here. And so it's pretty clear that they're not going to be able to have quite as much of an attacking outlet when they play Liverpool as they did against West Ham. So how are Arsenal going to counteract that? Well, we can look back at these last two games in the Community Shield and this game in July to look at how Arsenal managed to play the ball out and around this Liverpool team. And again, using our pattern analysis and now adding in our pressure metrics, you can see these red dots that show how when they were under serious pressure, when there was a lot of pressing going on from this Liverpool team. And you can see how Arsenal were having to move the ball around the back, and they were having to move the ball into wide areas to get the ball away from that really dangerous Liverpool press. And if we look at the sustained threat periods of those games to identify when Arsenal did get outlets and did get opportunities, it doesn't get much clearer than that. They're trying to get the ball into that left channel behind Trent Alexander-Arnold, get it into Aubameyang. And as Arsenal fans will remember from that Community Shield, he picked up the ball in that kind of area, cut inside onto his right foot and bent it around the keeper. And certainly Arsenal and their fans will be hoping that that's the type of outlet that they can get in this game.
Thanks, Ben. That's really interesting. I mean, it's not just the Liverpool game where they've worked Aubameyang on the left. There was the third goal at Fulham was a carbon copy of that. They also did it in the FA Cup against City and Chelsea as well. It's very much a kind of Arteta special move that they've got nailed down. I mean, if they can pull it off at Anfield, you know, it's probably the toughest ask in some senses. I mean, Aubameyang a couple of seasons ago only had 13 touches there, and 6 of those were kickoffs. So he'll hope for a slightly more productive game than that one. But to have a bit of a closer look at Liverpool, Kevin and Tom are going to do that. So, Kev, over to you.
Thanks, Duncan. We're going to jump back into playing styles and switch over to Liverpool. And, spoiler alert, they're an exciting team to watch and an exciting team to look at on paper as well. So if we look at them for last season, we see that they were an above average team just about everywhere, not in direct play, but near it. Where they definitely stood out was fast tempo. Unlike Arsenal, they played with the ball in the back above league average, but they didn't just settle for that. It progressed into build up. It progressed into sustained threat. They countered above league average, and of course they pressed above league average, and they crossed above league average. If we switch over to this season, we're going to see that the first 2 matches are kind of hinting at the fact that might be even more pronounced this season for some of these styles. So we look at fast tempo. They've been quicker this season than they were last season. They're playing with the ball less in the back, but they're playing with the ball. They're progressing that more up pitch into build up and into sustained threat, which is really exciting football to watch. And then the most stark increase is high press. They're pressing massively, 15 high press regains per match. They're certainly not countering. No surprise that there's not much direct play. Their crossing is a bit down, but that's probably just a sample size. I think if you look at it on an individual level, Robertson's actually crossing more, Trent Alexander-Arnold a little bit less, but I'm sure that'll come back up as the season goes on. Something else to look at is how sparse these opponent radars are. We see that opponents are maintaining the ball in back, and hardly ever are they able to progress it up pitch. They're really settling for direct play. And if we look at how Liverpool's opponents have scored this year, again, only 2 matches, and we're looking at mostly that Leeds match here, but it's a goal per match from direct play. And if we go back to what Arsenal have looked like so far from direct play, like we said, well below league average. So there might not be a whole lot for Arsenal out of this match, and Liverpool are looking, like an enhanced version of themselves from last season and the first 2 matches this year. And part of that probably has to do with Thiago, which Tom's going to touch on.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. I think what's interesting on the radars is we saw Liverpool's incredible ability to of the high press regains and winning the ball really high up the pitch. Just looking in the data, we can already see that Xhaka, Gabriel and Ceballos are in the top 5 for touches per 90, which goes to show against Fulham and West Ham, they've obviously dominated possession, not really been tested too much so far. So we'll see what happens against Liverpool. But we saw Mane's ability to be able to chase down Kepa's Kepa in possession and obviously scoring a goal from then. And they've actually not scored many goals from open play at the moment, Liverpool. Obviously, you've got Mane scoring 2 and Salah scoring a hat-trick, but most have come from penalties and set pieces. So it'll be interesting to see how Arsenal actually play out from the back. And obviously, they spend a lot of time in that maintenance phase. So that will be interesting. So just looking at Thiago's 75 passes from the previous game, we can see that 14 and 13 went to the fullbacks with Arnold and Robertson. Actually received the ball inside from Arnold 12 times, and Mo Salah was the third person that he passed to the most. So we can just see obviously on the pitch plots where they went to and where he received them. But I think this is going to be sort of the tell of this game is obviously if Thiago does start, if he is playing in centre midfield, we want to see Liverpool in possession, being able to exploit those wide areas. We'll touch upon it later about how he receives from one side of the pitch and manages to move it to the other side where the space is. So can he exploit the areas in which Bellerin and Saka potentially may leave, or are they going to drop back into sort of a 5 at the back to protect these areas? But obviously that will then mean that their attacking outputs are probably going to suffer. So going through and looking at the influence of Thiago, we can just see those passes plotted again. The drop down menu to Trent Alexander-Arnold, you can see that Thiago picks up the ball from the left hand side of the pitch and then sort of opens his body up and plays to the right hand side of the pitch. You can just see the length of the passes, so they're not just sort of your short passes, they're actually just trying to open up and exploiting that space that's being left. And the same for Robertson on the left-hand side, is he's picking up the ball from the right-hand side of the pitch and obviously looking towards the other side of the field and exploiting that space, allowing them to then get some crosses into the box and finding those attacking outputs. So this is how Liverpool have been creating danger as a whole. But most of their danger actually coming from when they move from back to front really quickly in the counter-attacking phase. So if I just hover over this, we can see that the amount of chains underneath the pattern, we can just see how much of it's going through the central areas. We know that Fabinho and Van Dijk have been turning the ball over and then moving it through into central midfield and actually passing it on into the attacking areas. Obviously, the role of Ceballos and Xhaka are really going to be something that they need to be really disciplined with. Obviously, if they're looking to create, they need to be aware that out of possession, this is where Liverpool are creating a danger and actually could really have an effect on them conceding goals in the upcoming fixture.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, really, really interesting stuff. It's very much the kind of, I guess, in some senses, the tactical master of the Premier League in Jurgen Klopp, given that Liverpool are the reigning champions against very much the up-and-coming man in the form of Mikel Arteta. I mean, one man who's going to be very intrigued by this game, I'm sure, is Pep Guardiola. You know, Arteta is former assistant, and if Arteta can continue to find a way to exploit Liverpool, that's not just good news for Arsenal, but good news for Manchester City as well. I know some people weren't too excited about the Thiago 75 passes, but for fans of extrapolation, if he does play and he plays 90 minutes, 2 times 75 is 150. Only 11 players in Premier League history have completed 150 passes in a single Premier League game, so that's also something to keep an eye out on. But yeah, it's going to be a brilliant game. The season, obviously, record number of goals last weekend with 44, and with more penalties being awarded than ever before, there's obviously a lot of potential for excitement and for games to swing back and forth. So hope you've enjoyed this video. We'll all be back again very soon.